Hey guys, so welcome to this new video and we are going to continue with our PSIR crash course. I know that I have not been able to upload videos for almost 2 months now, but I've put this thing back on track and I believe I'll be able to complete the required videos, the necessary ones as soon as possible. So this is the Western political thought part that we are going to continue today with John Locke. Now, after completing John Locke and then John Stuart Mill, I'll be moving to the other sections of the syllabus. For example, paper 1A and paper 2A. These are the sections which are relatively difficult to prepare because uh, paper 1B, that is Indian government and politics. Okay, so this part most of us have a fair bit of idea from our prelims preparation and the GS preparation in mains. Okay, so this does not need separate preparation. Just a bit of fine tuning with the orientation for PSIR, that would be enough. And for paper 2B we have international relations. Here again the content will remain the same, just the same as GS. Will only be adding the scholars, and will be adding the perspectives and the style of writing. Okay, so it will be a matter of differentiating how we write answers separately from GS and PSIR. Okay, so these two sections are easier to handle, I would say. So we'll be stressing more on 1A and 2A. So in 1A we'll be talking about political theory, ideologies, and all those things like state, okay, state, power, justice. I'll be coming up with videos on these topics, separate videos. And this will be paper 1A, and in paper 2A we'll be talking about comparative politics. We'll be talking about state in comparative perspective. Okay, so these all things we'll be doing, but for today we'll be covering John Locke. So let's start. Now this is all about me. I think you know about me. If you are following this channel, I would request all of you to please like this video and subscribe to the channel as much as possible and share it so that I can keep making these videos free of cost. So now let's start. Okay, so in Western political thought, what we have covered so far, we have covered the earlier thinkers. Okay, so we have covered Plato, we have covered Aristotle, we have covered Machiavelli, we have covered Hobbes, and now we come to John Locke. Okay, so what I had pointed out right at the beginning of the course is that we need to keep the timeline. We need to stay in tune with the timeline. Okay, so the timeline is very important. So who is moving from where and who comes after which thinker. Okay, so John Locke comes after Hobbes. Okay, as far as the syllabus is concerned, we are only concerned about Hobbes, and Hobbes is followed by John Locke. Okay, so in Hobbes, we had seen that Hobbes had given the concept of state, this concept of state and sovereignty. Okay, so this was the unique contribution of Thomas Hobbes, and he gave the concept of sovereignty of state and called it the Leviathan. He gave absolute power to the state, so to secure the rights of people, to secure a kind of society that was not existing in the state of nature. So we saw that Thomas Hobbes was social contract thinker. Okay, so from the UPSC syllabus perspective, social contract tradition begins with Thomas Hobbes. Okay, the next thinker who is part of this social contract tradition is John Locke. Okay, so we'll see how the two thinkers differ, even though they are part of the same kind of thinking. Both are both are kind of batsmen. Okay, they are both top order batsmen, but their playing styles are different. So if one of them is good with pull shots, the other one is good with the offside shots. Okay, so just like that. So in social contract theory, we'll see how Hobbes and Locke they differ. Now, John Locke, this is just the the very brief introduction. So he's known as the father of liberalism. So in most of the answers that we will be writing in PSIR, in any of the sections, and if the question is dealing with liberalism, then we must be mentioning John Locke because he is the father of liberalism. Okay, so this is where liberalism really starts. Okay, so the precursors of liberalism that we see, the liberalism that will follow will have Bentham, okay, will have Kant. So it starts with John Locke, right? In case of Hobbes, we had seen that he was influenced by the events of 1640s. Okay, so 1640s events in Britain, they were very, very, violent. So accordingly, Hobbes gave a theory of very violent, brutish state of nature. But that is not the case with Locke. Locke belonged to a period when the Glorious Revolution took place. Okay, so the Glorious Revolution was a very peaceful event, and it was about movement from absolute monarchy to constitutional monarchy. So you see, I had pointed this out in one of the previous videos that every thinker is a child of his times. So every thinker is influenced by what is happening around him at that point of time. So for example, we, the people of this country, for example, our generation, people who are 25, 30, 35 years old now, our lives will be defined by the coronavirus pandemic. Okay, so we'll be growing up, and the theories that will be forming, the ideas that will go through our the ideas that we will be exchanging with others, they will be heavily influenced by something like the COVID pandemic. Similarly, the Glorious Revolution was something like that for Locke. This was the life defining event for him, and this was something that made him come up with the theories that he actually did. Now, as I said, it was a peaceful event. Okay, so Locke, the theories of Locke, you will see that they are comparatively more peace loving compared to Hobbes. Okay, so the next thing is that he's a utilitarian thinker. So liberal utilitarian, and he's also known as a scholar of possessive individualism. Now, why this is so, we'll be talking about this later in the video. In short, he's basically a very staunch defendant of the right to property and the night watchman state. So since he is the father of liberalism, liberalism, the early versions of liberalism. So liberalism, will be talking about liberalism in details when we come to the ideologies video. Okay, so in the ideologies video, we'll be talking about liberalism in details, and we'll be talking about John Locke once again in that video. But for now, you can just know that liberalism, the earlier version of liberalism, was negative liberalism. Okay, negative liberalism was all about a reduced role of state, and after that came positive liberalism, which came up with the idea of welfare state. So after from negative to positive, there was a transition. Okay, and this transition period was represented by John Mill, about whom we'll be studying in the next video. Okay, now negative liberalism was all about a night watchman state. The role of the state should be minimum. It should only ensure the rights of the individual and not interfere in other things. Okay, so there is no other role that the early liberals wanted to envision. Along with the night watchman state, he also was a staunch defendant of the right to property. He considered it to be sacrosanct. Okay, so he was one of the most important thinkers after Plato. You remember, Plato gave communism of property. So Plato was really concerned about something like property. So after Plato, John Locke is the other major thinker who has dealt with the right to property, who has talked about the right to property in great detail. So this, as I've already told you, he had a liberal view of man, society, and state. Okay, so according to him, as as we will come to know in liberalism also, that man is rational and man is the best judge of his interests. Okay, so man does not need some kind of divine intervention or some kind of state above him, some kind of superman kind of leader to tell him what is good for him and what is bad for him. Man is rational and he knows what is good for him. So society is just the means, the individual is the real end. Okay, so it's basically glorifying individualism, and this is where Macpherson calls him the scholar of possessive individualism. So he's really someone who loves the individual. Okay, so he's not talking about society as a virtue. He's not talking about man as a social animal. He's simply talking about man as an individual who knows that he is rational and he is the best judge of his own interest. So the next thing is that he criticized Hobbes' Leviathan and Filmer's Patriarcha. Okay, so both of them, they justified an absolute state. So in case of Hobbes, we have already studied that in great detail. Uh, Hobbes wanted a Leviathan state, sea monster, wanted the state to have absolute control over over its people. Similar with Filmer's Patriarcha, we are not going to study about this thing in detail because it's not part of the syllabus. You can just keep in mind that this was also another work by Filmer who gave this concept of absolute state, right? So now we will talk about the main ideas of Locke. We'll briefly deal with all the main ideas which are relevant from UPSC perspective. I'll repeat this once again. These are the ones that are relevant from UPSC perspective, because Locke's, if you go and study Locke's works in greater detail, you'll be reading tons and tons of books. You'll have to read at least 10-20 books, but we do not have that much time, so we'll just keep ourselves limited to whatever is relevant to the exam and the pointers which have been asked time and again in the previous year's question papers. So the first idea which makes John Locke famous is the idea of limited government. Okay, so this, as I said, that he is the father of liberalism, and he was one of the early liberals, and the early liberals were proponents of negative liberalism. So negative liberalism was all about a night watchman state. Okay, and a night watchman state meant that the state will keep its keep its interventions in the individual's life to a bare minimum. The state will just protect the rights of the individual. It's just a night watchman in that sense. It will do nothing else. It will protect the rights of the individual and make sure that the rights are not infringed upon. That's it. End of the story. And this concept of limited government, it comes from the idea of natural rights. So Locke is considered to be one of the major proponents of the theory of natural rights. So we'll be talking about this in detail. For now, I can tell you that from this idea of natural rights, what came to pass was the fact that individuals enjoyed certain rights in the state of nature. Okay, so if in the state of nature, when we are talking about Hobbes, the state of nature was brutish. So this was the exact term used by Hobbes. The state of nature was kind of nightmare, and it was all about pain, insecurity. So to escape that pain, to escape that nightmare, people decided to form state, and they gave absolute power to state to make sure that they do not have to go back to that state of nature. So this was what Hobbes had advocated. You can go back to the previous video and you'll find out. Now, when we come to John Locke, we find that John Locke says that the state of nature is one of peace and goodwill. Okay, so state of nature is peaceful and there is a lot of goodwill in it. So people are, they're happy in state of nature and they enjoy something known as natural rights. So natural rights are kind of God given to the individual, and nobody can take away the natural rights, and he enjoys natural rights even in the state of nature. So this is the major difference between Hobbes and Locke. While state of nature was entirely a nightmarish concept for Hobbes, from which people had to escape in order to get a better quality of life, for Locke, state of nature was very peaceful, and there was a lot of goodwill in it, and people enjoyed natural rights. So state was formed as a matter of convenience, and so it was, this government or state, it had to rely on the consent of the governed. Okay, so the consent of the governed money, you had to take the wishes, the ideas of the people into account when you are forming the state. The state cannot have absolute powers and do whatever it wants to. State is merely a tool of convenience. Okay, so this is what the state is according to Locke. So we'll talk more about this in the next slide. But before that, with the concept of limited government, he comes up with the concept of what is consent basically. So for example, if there are 100 people and 100 people are to take a vote to elect a particular leader, okay, and there are 70 people who vote for A and 30 people who vote for B. Okay, so this is just a very crude example. Now A gets the majority, okay, but B is minority, right? So A will get to become the leader. Now according to Locke, you cannot take everyone's opinion and everyone's views into account. So when the majority has given its opinion in favor of something, minority is supposed to have given its tacit consent. Tacit means that it's not overly explicit, it's supposed. Yeah, it's supposed to have given its consent. Theoretically, it's assumed that the minority has also given its consent, given that the majority has already voiced its opinion. So this is the idea of tacit consent of the minority, which John Locke has given. Now, as I said, government, state, it's a fiduciary trust. Okay, it's between people. Okay, so these are the people. They come together and they decide to form the government, and this government is nothing but an instrument of utility for the people. So the people are the trustees. So if you Google this word trust, you must have heard of this trust and charity and organizations and corporations. In that context, you must have heard of trust. So in a trust, there are trustees. Okay, so the trust has to work as per the ideas and as per the wishes of the trustees. So people are the trustees. Okay, and the government cannot do anything that the trustees don't want. So the government is basically just the trust. Okay, it's just a piece of fiction, and people are the trustees. They set the rules. The broad rules are set by natural rights. Okay. Now, this is what I've already mentioned, that in social contract theory, which we studied in case of Hobbes also, the major difference is that the state of nature has been visualized differently by the two thinkers. Okay. So this is exactly what is written here. And the creation of the state is just a matter of convenience. This is the key word. Okay, it's convenience. In case of Hobbes, it was necessity. As I said, state of nature for Hobbes was nightmarish. So people had to create state to get out of that pain. But in case of Locke, Locke says that it's a matter of convenience. Now, what is this convenience? The convenience is that it creates a common authority and separates power centers. So it's basically institutionalizing okay, so it's a process of institutionalization by which it's creating a common authority, which is known as state, and it is dividing the powers separately for legislature, executive, and so this is the reason for which the state is created. It gives a common authority which people can look up to. So for example, if you are staying in a housing complex and there are 100 flats in it, so there'll always be a kind of executive council. Okay? So if there is some water problem or something, so the people can represent to that executive council, we are not having water, so please contact the municipality and get it sorted. So it's like making your lives easier by appointing a body, appointing something, appointing an institution which can take care of your problems. And it separates the three wings. Okay, it separates the legislature, executive, and judiciary, so that there is no particular wing that abuses its own powers. So it's like checks and balances. Okay. So as Locke has already as I've already told you, that Locke has this rational idea of man in mind. Okay, man is rational, and man knows what is good for him. He does not need state, he does not need a king to tell him what is good, what is bad for him. But there are certain pessimistic aspects of human nature. Okay, they still exist. Man is rational does not mean that human nature is completely altruistic. That is wrong. Human nature has certain pessimistic aspects, but these pessimistic aspects, they can be checked by the presence of state. As I said, it's about creating an institution. So the institution sets certain rules, sets certain boundaries. So the state will state will create a rule that going out into the jungle after 11 o'clock in the night, that is dangerous, and that is dangerous for your life. Okay, so if this is a rule that is set by the state, then if people obey this, their life will be protected. So anyone who is not following this rule, he's a habitual offender or someone, then that person will not get the protection of the state. Okay, so and this is something that the majority has already agreed to. So this is what this institutionalization means: creating an institution, creating certain rules, and when the majority has agreed, you let the system work. So here we have basically two contracts. Okay, so two contracts. One, the first contract creates civil society, the next one creates state. So it's not just one contract which creates both. So civil society is created as a kind of intermediary which ends up creating state. So as I said, that state is created for convenience, and checks and balances are kept in place to make sure that there is no abuse of power. Apart from this, the other important thing in Locke's theory is that man transfers three specific rights to state. Okay, so it's the right to make laws, the right to execute laws, and the right to adjudicate. Okay, so it's the legislature, executive, and judiciary. So these are the three rights which man, specifically man means the individual. Okay, so this is the individual. The individual specifically gives these rights up to the state. Now, when you compare this with Hobbes, you will see that in case of Hobbes, Hobbes had visualized that man gives up all his rights. So he's giving up everything to the state. Okay, so that was the concept of an absolute state. This is different. Okay, so this is selectively giving up your rights to make sure that your life is more convenient. Okay. Now this is another major addition to the previous thinkers. So when we spoke about Plato, Socrates, we had talked about the fact that they visualize the soul as something that has reason, and this soul resides in the kingdom of God. So this was exactly the term that I might have used: kingdom of God. Okay, so soul was visualized as something that is permanent, and the soul has reason, and man is born with it. Okay, so when we spoke about dialectics, of Socrates, we spoke about the fact that it's a way of enlightening your soul. Okay, so the soul has all the knowledge, you just need to enlighten it. Now Locke, he makes a departure. He does not agree with this. He's not agreeing with this. He believes that the mind is tabula rasa, which means a clean slate. So the mind does not have a whole lot of things embedded in it when man is born. That is wrong. Man's knowledge is based on experience. So this is where he turns into an empiricist and materialist. So he believes that when we are going through life, when we are experiencing certain things, that's when our brain starts developing. Okay, so that's when the mind starts recording certain things. Initially it's just a clean slate, so there is nothing in it. So one day you go from point A to point B, and there was an accident somewhere in between, so you learned something, so that was recorded in your mind. So another day you were playing cricket and somebody hit you in the head with the bat, you learned something, so that got recorded. So in this way things get recorded on this clean slate, and this is where experience comes in. This is where he talks about being an empiricist and a materialist. Okay, here again, utilitarianism. is just the start of liberalism. And as I said, the early liberals were all about negative version of liberalism. They did not want state to intervene unnecessarily in the life of man. And being an utilitarian, we'll talk more about this in the upcoming videos. He was a believer in the pain and pleasure principle, that it is pain and pleasure which guides man in his actions. And since these are the two guiding principles, these are the ones that shape man's experience. So this clean slate, this is filled up depending on the actions that an individual undertakes based on his pain and pleasure. Okay. So herein he concludes that the solution to human weakness is not in reason but in creating appropriate institutions. So this reason thing we were talking about in the early thinkers, okay, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they were all about the philosopher king. They were all about soul has reason. They had something like something very very utopian in mind. So Locke says that this is not the solution to human weakness. You can engage in dialectics and everything, but still it will not be a solution. The solution is in creating institutions. So he was all for institutions, and it was this idea with which he came up with the concept of state, that state should come up. State would be something that checks the pessimistic aspects of human nature. You do not need to consider human being to be god. You do not need to consider that the soul of a human being has everything in it, but the presence of state with its own set of rules and regulations and laws will ensure that the pessimistic side of human nature does not dictate human actions. So that was the purpose. Okay. Now this is another another difference, a major difference from what Hobbes had specified. Okay, so Locke gives people the right to revolt if state fails to protect right to life, liberty, and property. Okay, so the property aspect is something that is very new to us. None of the previous thinkers have dealt with property in great detail except perhaps Plato, right? So in case of Hobbes, we had seen that only if the state fails to protect right to life, only in that case the individual had the right to revolt. In this case, Locke adds liberty and property to the list. Okay, so if state fails to protect any of these three rights, or if the executive interferes or fails to implement the laws of the legislature, so these are the two situations in which Locke envisions some kind of revolt. Okay, now the term revolt is it can be a bit misleading. Okay, now by revolt, Locke does not mean some kind of violent bloodshed. Revolt means peaceful constitutional change. Okay, so it's all about change. Now what the circumstances which legitimize the demand for change. Okay, so it's all about legitimizing the demand for change. So what legitimizes this demand? The legitimization can happen if state fails to protect these three rights, and if the executive interferes in or fails to implement the laws of the legislature. Now herein there is another important thing, that this is not an individual right. Okay, so it's not an individual who can simply go to the corner of the street one day and say that I want to revolt, I want peaceful change. No, it's not an individual right, it's a collective right only. It's only when the majority says that we need a change, only then will it become legitimate, not otherwise. Okay, it's not an individual right. So this statement, you will come across this statement in many places whenever Locke is mentioned: no law, no liberty. Now, this is just his affirmation of of the importance that natural law has in his scheme of things. Okay, so for Locke, natural law is the foremost. It's the most important guiding principle for state, society, and human life. Natural law, as I told you, Locke believed that even in the state of nature, people enjoyed natural law. So people enjoyed natural rights. So this natural rights are guided by the law of nature. Okay, so unless you recognize natural law as something, as as a principle. Freedom is not guaranteed. Okay, so even if you create a state and you do everything, okay, so you create a state, you separate legislature, executive and judiciary and do everything that has been specified so far, but you do not recognize natural law. Okay, so if you do not recognize natural law, freedom is not guaranteed. Laws made by state are subordinate to natural law, so it's natural law that comes above everything. Okay, so natural law, and under that you can have state made law. Okay, so if you have a parliament and the parliament says that uh, human beings can have a building on the sky, will be building castles in the air. Okay, then that will be against the hypothesis given by Locke. Okay, castles in the air are not allowed by natural law, so they cannot be allowed by a state also. That's it. Okay, now this is the last thing. Law must serve its due, and the due of law is okay. So basically, when we talk about Locke, we are mostly talking about the departure from Hobbes. Okay, so we are mostly talking about Locke based on the past and present. Okay, so we'll be referring to Hobbes, how Locke differs from Hobbes, and when we go to the the future videos, we'll be talking about how Locke influenced the future. Okay, so we'll have Mill, we have Bentham, and we have a whole lot of other thinkers. So it's in the context of the past and present that will do a lot of comparative analysis in case of Locke. So this is it for today's video. The next video I'll be talking about Mill, and then I'll be I'll be just fast tracking this entire course so that people attempting mains in 2021, even they can be benefited by this course. Okay, so thank you everyone.